Now, the final thing I'm going to do here was something that was an inspiration this morning from one of my first block students. I'm walking through the room looking, and I said, "Hey, does anybody think they're done?" And he raised his hand, and I went over to look at his scene to see how his terrain looked. And the kid had built an airport. Not only had he built his terrain and put trees in and painted the terrain, he built an entire airport, runway, airplane hangars, extra airplanes just parked by the hangars, a control tower. I was like, man, I like the way that he used his time. So I'm going to build a runway here. So at the moment, my plane itself, it's kind of like I want to move it more or less into the center of my open space that I have available here. And let me look here. I've got a little bit of a mountain right there that I don't want to have right there. I'm going to click on my terrain here, my razor lower terrain, and hold my control key down. And yeah, I'd like that all pushed down right there. Yeah. All right, there we go. Good. I want this area to be flattened out. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a 3D object, cube. And that cube, I'm going to name it Runway 1. And I'm going to go ahead and get my move tool, look at this from the top, and kind of move it over here by my aeroplane, just in the vicinity of my aeroplane. Then I'm going to zoom in on it and note that it is up in the sky, way up in the sky. I'm going to set its Y position to 0.1. That means that even maybe a little less than that, 0.01. Yeah. Negative 0.25. There we go. I just want the very top of that cube to be sticking out. And then looking at this from above, I'm going to change its X scale. And let's see. I want this to be, as wide as a runway might be. That's changing its scale in X. And then its scale in Z. Let me move out and see how far along I am. Change its scale in Z. Might make its width 20. Scale in Z, 100. And I'm going to call that runway 1. And I will select it and the plane. The plane and the runway. And I'm going to move them all out kind of towards the middle of the map. Get them both in the same general area. And maybe even slide these back a little bit here. And then I'm going to copy runway 1. And I'm going to Control D. I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to change its name to runway 2. And I might make its length 125 and get my E key to rotate it. You know how very often these airports have got runways that are at different angles. Maybe even get my move tool, looking at it from the top. Move it over a little bit like this. Airports, they always got kind of an interesting look to them. And so I've got these two runways here now. And what I want to do is I want to paint them black. I don't have a material that's black yet. So in my material folder, I'll create a new material that I'll call black. And I'll set it to something in the black range. And then I'll go ahead and paint my runways black. Now that's got my two runways painted. I can now get into, there we go. My camera's moved over there behind it, and I can get in here and I can fly down my runway and take off right above there we go. There I go. Now, at the moment, if I were to zoom in on my plane pivot here and rotate this around backwards, I would like my camera to be lined up with this view here that I'm setting myself up, because I've moved my plane around. I moved it to a new spot. It's not where it was originally. And my camera hasn't changed position. But there's a quick way to easily make your camera snap to this view that's in my scene view. So I've got my scene view arranged the way I like it. I'm going to select my main camera and I'm going to press the Control key, the Shift key, and F. And just like that, Control Shift F puts the camera to match the view from my scene view. So now when I go to play test it, hit the play button, the adjustment is much quicker, and there's the camera right behind my aircraft now, and my camera is following my aircraft just like it's supposed to. All right, so I've got my runway set up here. Now I'm going to create a control tower. So a control tower is just basically a cylinder. So here in the hierarchy, I'll create a 3D object, cylinder, and I'm going to move that cylinder like maybe about right here at this juncture and change its scale in X to like 10 and its scale in Y to like 15 and its scale in Z to like 10. And let me take a look and see what I've made here and move that up. In fact, if I put it up at 15 in Y, it'll match. Yeah, I might make that a little bit thinner. Maybe I'll go with 7 and 7 for my scales in X and Z. And that's going to be my control tower base. And, that one I can paint, some nice little brown here. And then I'm going to Control D, duplicate my control tower base, and I'm going to rename it just control tower. And I'm going to change its Y scale to like 6, too much. 3, still too much. 2, that's about right. And its X and its Z scale, I'm going to set those to like 10 and 10. And if I slide this thing up to the top here now, I've kind of got a quick air traffic control tower. For its material, I'll right click and create a new material here, and I'll call this light blue and set it to some color in the light blue spectrum. And I'm going to go ahead and apply light blue to my control tower just so it has a little color contrast. So there's a control tower, quick and dirty control tower. Now, the thing that really impressed me with the student, let me pick my 2 runways here. That runway, the second runway, and let me just pick runway 1. I want to move it forward so that my plane is kind of at the beginning of the runway. I want to create some hangars, some plane hangars. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate Control D, my control tower base, and change its scale in X to like 12 and its scale in Z to like 12 and maybe its scale in Y to 5. And I'm going to give it a 90-degree rotation in X. Then I'm going to move this thing over here and move it down. And let's see, out right about here. And let me get the rotate tool, rotate that around. I think I'll change its Y scale to 7. Let me look at this thing and see how it's looking. Move tool to move it down a little bit. I'm creating what looks like a plane hangar, someplace where, airplanes would be parked. And if I wanted to, I could change its scale in X to like 14, and that would make it kind of a little more stretched, more like an ellipse. And then I'm going to Control D, duplicate it, and move this hangar over. Select the 2 hangars, Control D, duplicate them, move the 2 hangars over, and I've now got 4 hangars. And then one of the last things I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my plane pivot, my plane prefab, and first I'm going to make sure that I don't have any overrides that I need to apply. And I can see that I do have an override on my plane pivot. So I'm going to apply that override. Make sure that your plane pivot prefab has no overrides in the scene. And then what I'm going to do here, and here's the trick, is I'm going to right-click my plane pivot that's in my hierarchy, go down to prefab, and unpack completely. This is going to basically remove the prefab characteristic of this object, and I'm going to change this to plane prop. It's going to be a prop. And my plane prop, I don't want it to have a script, so I'm going to remove the script component from my plane prop. All it's going to have is, all the stuff that's in there, but it's not going to have the script. It's just a plane prop. Then in my prefabs folder, I'm going to drag my plane prop that I have and drop it into my prefab folder. And then I'm going to take the one that's up here in my hierarchy, and I'm going to move it over here, get my rotate tool and rotate it around like 90 degrees in Y. And let me frame in on that thing. I'm going to set its Y position to like 1. Maybe I'll set its Y position to 0.5. There we go, a little bit closer to the ground. And then what I'll do is I'm going to Control D, copy it. W, my plane prop here, hit Control D to copy that and move the copy over. Select the 2 plane props, Control D to copy them, move them over. Control D to copy them again and move them over one more time. Let me see how this is looking. Yeah, I've now got a fleet of airplanes. Now, all of these are just props. None of these plane props have the flying script on it. So I'll name that one plane prop 1. Then I'll go through and just make sure that I give these all meaningful names. Plane prop 2, plane prop 3, plane prop 4, plane prop 5, and plane prop 6. Also, my these copies that I made of the control tower base, this is actually going to be a hangar 1, hangar 2, hangar 3, and hangar 4. And then my hierarchy is now getting filled up with all kind of stuff. Remember that lake we made in Terrain 2? I'm going to drag its water and make it a child of the terrain. So Terrain 2's water will move with Terrain 2 when I move it. I already did that with Terrain 1. But then down here, I've got my runway 1 and 2, my control tower base and tower, my hangars, and all my plane props. It's a lot of objects in my hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to call this empty game object airport. Now I'm going to position that at 0, 0, 0. That's where I'm going to position that empty game object called airport. And then I will select from my runway 1 to my plane prop 6. These are all the objects that are part of my airport. And I'm going to drag them and drop them into my airport. That way I can hide them. My hierarchy is cleaned up big time. And in fact, if I want to hide my whole airport, I can quickly do that just by clicking the little eye right here. And now my airport is hidden. But the last thing I need to do, because I currently don't have a flyable plane in here, if I click the run button here and use WASD, my camera goes nowhere. My camera does nothing because there's no plane in the scene. So I need to bring my plane pivot back into the scene. So I'll bring it out and put it out here at the end of my runway, maybe give it a rotation in Y of 180 so it's pointing in the right direction. And I think I'm pretty happy with that positioning. I'm going to set its position in Y to 1. Let me see. Am I good? I'm off the ground, ready to fly. I'm going to position my scene view so that it's kind of like how I want my camera to be, because I can see here that I've I've lost my plane. In the camera view, I've lost my plane again. So I'll reposition the plane pivot, and I will select the main camera, Control Shift and F, then switches that main camera to have that view right behind my plane there in the scene. And if I go to play test it now, and there I am, I'm flying. And I created an airport. If I was in maximized, I'd be able to see things a little bit better. And let's see. If you click off of the game area, you have to click back in the game window in order to go back in. Nice. Strafe it. Yeah, I'm going to make things blow up soon. Okay. So don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in class.